Little Primer is back-to-back conversations with someone passionate about their work and passionate about someone else's work. Mostly art and mostly Atlanta. I'm your host, Sean Mills. So have you ever done like a large one? Yeah.
I did. Well, only because in high school, when I first started doing art, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I got the chance to be president of our National Art Honor Society at my school in Lilburn. And so one thing that they did, they always painted murals for Relay for Life. So I had to paint a new mural every year for like 2 years. We had multiple.
That's awesome.
We had like 2 a year, and we painted like Yellow Submarine. We painted like just all of these different come-ups and sketch and stuff. And the sad thing is, and also for the baseball and wrestling team too, it was really weird. They like had this one where they're like, we want a panther like popping through the wall, like on a flat wall, and I didn't know what art was. So I was just like, okay, I'll just figure this out. But it was a really fun experience because I had to understand, team dynamic, like accountability with the people that you're working with, so that you're not painting it by yourself. Also, like carving out a path to figure out how fast it takes to complete something like that, because it's hard. You gotta like plan it out. Underpainting, when to do everything. And it was fun. Ladders, safety. Just commitment. And also being able to do homework and get out of high school. So it was fun, and I kind of wish I would do it again, but I just don't. I never envisioned myself maybe doing it. But then again, life. Like I never envisioned myself being a curator, art specialist, but now like that's actually what I'm doing. So I'm just. Yeah.
Well, also like that, having that specific actual real experience is important, because there's so many ways that a mural isn't the same as a regular canvas, that it's like it can fade away if you don't do it right.
It's true.
It's like it can get distorted really easily.
If you don't measure, like just with your drawing or however you lay down stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of like fart things that could happen. But like I don't know, just as long as you like, if you're doing it by yourself, like I've never actually done one completely alone. I mean, I guess a few times for the wrestling team, but I had other people filling it. It was like I had to draft it, and really it's just a matter of measuring. It's like you treat the surface this big, you got to think about a wall that's like 12 feet by 30 feet, and then imagining that on paper, and then just graphing it out, and then just graphing it, doing it. Everybody has different methods. I had a printmaking teacher who did a similar mural. His name is Professor Joe Chimbiris. He's in Virginia now, I think. He was at KSU for like 2 years, but he did like print stuff and like did the mural with paper, and it was supposed to like fade away, but he did it all by himself, and it was crazy because it was figural too, and it was very, very large, probably like 25, maybe 30 feet high, in Atlanta. And I wish I could. He probably has it on his website. I have his card too in my wallet. But he talked about it, and I think everyone has their own different method. I think that you would probably love working that big. Maybe having that much space just to like just freely play around, and also consider the environment too, like Banksy and like all those different artists that like.
And that's a big thing. How the location, like the work. And then the community affects the work in a physical sense, because right now there's been like in the news a lot of interesting things where like had you heard about the LeBron mural in LA? So like LeBron moved from Cleveland to LA, and so like theoretically he's the best basketball player in the world, so they should be happy, but then he's also a threat to the legacy of Magic and these famous Lakers. So this local muralist made a mural, and then it was instantly defaced, and then the muralist was like, okay, well maybe this is what it is. It's not like whether they were right or wrong, I'm going to try to adjust it to try to fit the community. So he made a new mural where it was sort of like LeBron looking up to the famous Lakers of the past. So it's like, maybe this will be a little bit more sensitive, and they defaced that too. And like,
it's up to the artist, man.
Yeah, definitely. But like that's part of being a like public artist, and
it's true. And the public is involved.
And then on the East Coast here, in our footprint, the Vanderbilt had a new coach that replaced their James Franklin, who was a black coach, and they got a new black coach, and so you theoretically like it was going to be an easy transition, but the way the muralist painted the new coach, people considered it it was evoking some historical, like, sensitivity about the way black men have been painted in art before. That it's like I didn't think of it that way. The artist didn't think of it that way, but people thought it was a little bit too, like, in the tradition of like mammies and like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like there wasn't and that's partially I think because painting with like external house paint, it's hard to get sensitive gradations and stuff. So that was part of it. So they had to go back and like add more like detail, so it didn't look so like dark, I guess, or just like, you know, it was evoking something. And,
interesting.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of weird in the sense that the different problems for murals and outdoor murals than for like canvas painting, for sure.
That's awesome, but crazy.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of want to like research some of that, but yeah I agree. It is. There's lots of factors.
Yeah, and for one thing, you can't hide the way you can hide with canvas painting.
In your house, with no one watching.
Yeah, or galleries, yeah.
Which is kind of fun, but also awkward, because then people are just like staring, like, "What are you making?" And I'm just like, "Can you wait? Just give it to me!"
Does that happen a lot? Like you'll be painting and people just walk through and.
Yeah. I mean, we had to do all our murals outside, and then when we did the wrestling thing, sometimes I'd like come in the locker room and all the guys would be like, "What is that?
Yeah.
What is that?"
And you become like a performer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a performance,
yeah. And also like an ambassador. Like you're supposed to be like an ambassador to art for people that might be skeptical.
Yeah, like what are you doing? You're painting on a wall. Wow, that must mean you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in your head, but outside. Too.
Right. And I feel like the opposite is also can be annoying when people do that game of saying like, well, I can barely make a stick figure, and it's like, what are you asking from me right now? Do you want me to like apologize? Do you want me to like volunteer to teach you? Like, what is it that you want?
I mean, I get really not argumentative, but I kind of like always counter that with like the fact that art can be a very technical thing. Like it's very learned, it's a craft, it's a trade. People are trained to be artists.
Yeah.
Just like science, just like mathematicians and learning the formula. There's a formula to painting. So just because you might not know that formula now doesn't mean that you can't ever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, that's just how I am with the watercolor people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just like, I don't understand. And it's okay. But you got to put that paint on the page to understand how it moves and then control it.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I'm not gonna say I don't know.
Well,
I feel like I don't know. I've been saying a lot.
I say like too much.
Yeah, so. It's not professional, but I don't want to tell people something that they don't know and then say that because it counters that.
I had a teacher that I don't know if it was a tick or what, but he would do this move where he would say, "Of course Leonard Abramovich," and it'd be like, "Of course you don't," because it's like he was very well read and he would know like a 17th century, Russian poet, and it's like, of course I don't know that. That's but he would say it as if like, of course yeah. And like it may have been aspirational, like suggesting like, I'm not gonna act like you should know it, but like I'm just gonna pretend you do so that we can like move forward with the conversation in a graceful manner. Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't graceful.
But I was reading between the lines and being like, are you shading me, or
I need to understand what you're saying, Professor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that.
Have you ever had to do like public, like welcome to the gallery kind of public speaking, like to crowds of strangers like that?
Once, I guess, at the Facing Race conference, because there's only 4 artists, and it was a nationwide thing. Mm-hmm. They're like, "Oh, it's this person from Georgia. Tell us about your art experience." And it's like, I've only been painting for 5 years. I don't know. Whereas some of the other artists were like, already in their master's stuff and like doing things, and were more into their work, I guess, like developed, and I was still just kind of like dabbling.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like.
But the weird thing is that like there's secular time and there's like religious time, and like if you paint really vigorously, your 5 years can be someone else's 20 years. I think like that. Like some people they don't take it as seriously. They don't work as often, so that like
or just the idea of being prolific is like heavy,
mm-hmm.
and I get that. And it was that for me, like at the beginning, because I was so clueless. I still am, I feel like, in so many different ways, but it was almost like putting that paint on whatever surface. It's like I had to have a certain confidence in order for it to be unlocked and to become fluid. Now I feel like I'm at the place where it's like, I know this first time isn't going to work out. I know there's probably lots of mistakes, and I know someone else is going to look at it and be like, what is it? Like, moving on, you know?
Yeah.
There's always going to be something like that in whatever show I'm in, which, you know, I've been beginning to come to terms with. And in that, it's almost like refreshing, because it's like, hey, I can put this out there, and it could not work, which means I have to do something else. And now I'm addicted to just doing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think I get it. And what I think I heard in some of that was the fact that, like, you don't always know if it's what you're doing is for this moment or it's going to be like enriching your other something. Do you agree with that? That, like, it's like, and often I'm realizing right now as I'm trying to increase my scope of where my artwork reaches is that, like, for instance, I just, without like outing him, like sharing someone's info that wouldn't want it, but at the South Fulton Art Center, I met like the person who's a manager there, and he has his own nonprofit that he works on himself as like a side project, and so I never interpreted that as a potential benefit to me in trying to do this public art project of the Pianos for Peace, but through Pianos for Peace, at the physical location where I'm painting my piano, this guy happens to have like a lot of the same interests, and that he's wanting to start his own podcast, and so it's like you don't know what you're gonna like get. Like, you might think like, well, I know I'm gonna get a paycheck, or hopefully, right. But you're like, which relationship that's really going to benefit you, or what hand skill that you happen to be picking up for later, or like I'm trying to surrender to that.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Because like in school, of course.
Ellie, by the way, she's totally nice.
Ellie?
Yeah, she's friendly. She's gonna be like, who is this dude?
Well, yeah, like, so in school, it of course makes sense. It's like, I want to learn how to make a lithograph, so I'm going to go to lithograph class. Right. But then, like, now, once you get past the basic part, you can get to the part where it's like, I think I'll learn something about myself, and I don't know exactly what it's going to be.
But it can unlock the next door of whatever I will be doing.
Right.
Or making.
Right. Or partnership. Or
networking, you know? Mm-hmm. That's really important. That's awesome. And I feel like it's that attitude that's going to get you where you need to be. Where you want to be.
Yeah.
No, yeah, both. Because it's true, like, before I used to be like, man, I guess I have to have a certain job, or I have to make a certain kind of work, and, like, boxing everything in, but that's just not how life works.
Yeah.
Like, when you think of so many great masters, or even, like, really successful artists today, and then you think of, like, their first shop, or, like, their first, like, dabbling, like, it can be very different. Some people might not have even been in art at all.
Right.
You know, I know one of my professors, one of my mentors, Joe Remillard, he was a lawyer for, like, 15 years. And then he had a passion for art, but he was like, nah, I just want to be a lawyer. And then he didn't go back to school until way late. And then just felt so passionate for it, got networking, got funding from his previous career, and then he just, you know, pursued that. And that's weird how things can take a turn that way.
Right. And, like, from someone outside looking in, they might be like, oh, like, what I should do to copy Cara is get a job at a gallery. But I find there's a lot of kids that come out of school, like, they're adults, but they're like, I have to immediately intern at, like, the biggest gallery I can find.
Something.
Yeah, and I don't know that necessarily benefits you the way that yours, like, because you found a great fit that you're gonna be able to actually dig into projects. Whereas, like, a lot of places,
I had no idea that I would be involved in that. Like, honestly, I found it out from Isabella. And I had needed the extra 200 for, like, just savings and rent and other things, and I was just like, you know what, art opportunity, I want to do that, and also I'm really thankful just to have it to be able to cover the things that I need. And so in doing that, I just went in with that attitude, and I was just like, I want to help you.
Yeah.
And Shay saw that, and he was just like, why are you so excited about art and life? And I'm just like, I just really appreciate it. He's just like, do you want to work for me? And I was just like, okay. So it's so weird how it happened. And now it's really fun. Like, I don't know. It's kind of intimidating, too, because they've been having that business for, like, almost 40 years and doing restoration. They do so much. There's so many things that they do besides just, like, you know, exhibitions and collecting. But, like, it's incredible. So I feel like I get to learn by just partaking simply, and I don't know. Like, I don't expect to be there forever, you know. In the next year, I might leave, you know, looking for master stuff and just other things, but it's still a door, and it's still a refreshing, like, art environment to be in, you know. Because I've been in TAP for a really long time, and that's been a good environment, too, but there's a lot of, like, limitations.
Sure, yeah.
So many. Not just because of the county and, like, class sizes and stuff. Not to be, like, political, I don't want to talk about that. But it's hard working on a community level, trying to achieve, you know, some of those passions that you want and go far, because there's only so much that you get from it. So I definitely want to expand, and I think this is an opportunity for me to start that expansion.
But I actually just got to see a concert last night. My friend, they're called Feather Trade.
Oh wait, yeah, I saw you. You said you got to take a picture of the faces.
Yeah, and then next week, or not this Saturday, but the Saturday after, I have a friend in this band called Theocracy. Okay. They're like a heavy metal band that, like, Christian. Both these artists, I went to school with them as visual artists, and now they're, like, musicians, and they've, like, toured the UK, and, like, that was the weird thing we were all commiserating about, is the fact that here in America, their crowds are, like, less than 1% of how big their crowds are in Europe, because I guess lots of reasons. One of the reasons is they have more of a music culture, that it's just like, that they go to shows all the time, and that's just what you do, and you go to festivals, where it's, like, more niche here.
It is. Yeah, or it's like it's what you like, where it's like it's part of the culture. Art is a part of the history. It's also a part of the, you know, environment. Wherever you live, like you take Italy, for example, you'll find so many piazzas that have sculptures of, like, historical figures in museums and universities, and all of that is, like, all in line. So it's normal to go to the piazza, going to the square. It's like going to Marietta Square, but think about it, like, every day. Like, time to go to the square, time to just go relax and chill with friends, but in that environment. So in a way, it's almost like educating yourself more about your history, about your family. Here in the States, people are like, I want to know my family. I want to know my history. It's just like, I got to carve out my own path and be a pioneer and, you know, do everything by myself. Whereas in Europe, I feel like there's more of a familial sense and also an understanding of the rest of the world. They desire to know that. And only the people who do that here are, like, professors or, like, historians or, like, you know.
Right. Well, I'm just still, like, hung up on the idea of that when something's built into your culture versus even caring, like, that you don't actually have to make the choice to think, like, to be really garish. I would use the example of, like, if you grew up in, like, a Cuban household, you didn't choose to be a dancer. Like, everyone just dances every day, and to be really glib, that, like, at every event there's going to be music and people are going to be dancing at every holiday. Like, it's not a choice. Whereas here it's like, oh, you're a dancer, like, you chose to pursue that. But, like, here it's like you don't have that just automatic, that even if you're like, this is who I am. And so it's, like, similar to language. It's just like, if you grow up with it, it's way different than if you, like, have to try to learn it. Was there any sort of music culture at KSU when you were there? Music cultures relative to the school or relative to just the people that I met? Well, I just mean, like, do people, like, was that a thing? Like, Friday night we're going to go to a concert? Or was that just, like, not really? Yeah. I never really connected with other individuals that way. Okay, yeah. I mean, music was always a thing, but it was like, we're in the studio, we're going to do art, so we're going to play music while we do art because we're arting right now. Yeah. So that was, like, the extent of that. Okay. Because, like, there's some people who are, like, you know, shaky knees and, like, you know, it's like every year, and they have music and everything, like, festival. So, like, it wasn't like, the house parties at here this week. Like, something I had in school that I was just lucky, once again, just that it was just there. I went to school in Athens, so at that time, the art school was downtown. So I would have class, then go downtown, see a show. Yeah.
Oh,
see a show, and
awesome.
then go back to work in the lab after.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah. But I mean, not that it should be, but I was just wondering if like that you would shoot to Atlanta, because I had friends that went to Georgia Tech, and they would sometimes visit to Athens for a show if like a concert was there.
Thing. Yeah. Because like with Kennesaw, it is kind of a commute to get to Atlanta.
Right.
Sometimes.
But then you're also all commuters, not all, but lots of you are. So if it's like we're already driving anyway.
Yeah, but I grew up on campus.
Okay.
I had dorms until I was a senior, and then I moved here.
Yeah.
So.
Whenever I was in school too, the director of my school had this dream project that we would have an art dorm. Like it would be that you'd have like an artist in residence living there, and that it would be all the art students in place. That sounds really good. Like I wish they had that
at Kennesaw, but it's like for gifted students, like people above.
Which is different.
GP, yeah.
Like they might help each other in terms of being competitive, but
exactly.
But they're not like They're not like sharing their charcoal. They're not like saying, "Hey, let's check this out." You're right, and so you end up having to make your own community. Like I ran into some like-minded people, and then they became my roommates, and then like we would say like, "Oh, this cool DJ Spooky's gonna be in Savannah. Let's go there and let's do like a one-day road trip." But if you had an art dorm, it would be like a whole
hub
of everyone doing that kind of thing. You know,
that would be cool. And also with shows and like other things, like that would be a really cool way to like network and grow and just like
One of the cool things that happened after I graduated was they did this thing where they would buy out a motel, like a cheap motel, and like everyone would rent a room, and then they would do like a one-day pop-up art show where like they'd each have like each room was like an installation or a little mini gallery of their work. So like you could invite your friends and just basically like
have a gallery.
Yeah, which like it's like you have to be at a certain level of you could call it cool or just adventurous, because it's like it's very easy to like for someone to be like, oh, that's nice that you did that in a patronizing way, but like if you're young and you don't have a reputation anyway, like you're like, why not do this?
Why not?
Yeah.
What is there to lose if we're in doubt?
And another thing people I've seen do in that kind of milieu is have like these co-ops, like you find out like a space, and like you're like, okay, if we each pitch in $50, we can rent this and just have our own gallery and just rotate our own work. And that I never got patched into that, but like some of my peers did. Did you ever have any co-op experience there?
I mean, towards the end of graduation, I really wanted the idea of having my own show, so I did. But, I talked to some people, just like, if you wanted to have a group solo exhibition for senior exhibition. I just thought for the idea of senior exhibition, it would be so much better to go in the real world instead of doing it on a controlled lab that is the school gallery.
Yeah.
It's cool, and I get like for the purpose of the class, but like when my last semester started, I was just asking to my higher ups, and the director, just like, if I did a show in Atlanta, could that sub for that? I could still do all the coursework, do my website, do my resume, get my business cards, but could I try to get my own venue and do this? Wouldn't that sub for that? Because I found that much more exciting.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no, you could do it, but we want you to do it on campus. And I guess maybe it's for the boosting of the school, for the benefit of just like being in their space. And it was still a fun experience, but I still chose to go downtown and do it anyway because it was.
Did you reuse the work, or did you make separate work?
I had to use separate work because I had to do both at the same time.
That's cool.
And I had so much, like I had enough to have at least like, I don't know, I had all my sketchbooks in the school gallery because it's a thing, and then those like one large silk screen and like 3 wood pieces. Whereas downtown I had just like a collection of my directed study work, other prints, other things, and I tried to market in a sense where it's like first 5 people get free prints, and that cost a lot of people to come.
Oh, that's
and I ended up to at least break even, which is good because funding that was hard, but breaking even from sales was even better.
Yeah.
So
the more like I talk to you, the more like I feel like we're like think the same way, because my senior year, and I'll admit part of it was that I had a little bit of anxiety of like, oh man, I'm about to be out of school, I'm about to lose a support network, so I should like make use of these resources while I have them.
Right.
And so like I did 2 shows too, where one of them I did just like in the school's gallery, but by like as a solo show. Like I just found that there was a gap in the calendar between shows, and like and I just said like, hey, can I throw something up? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So like I like maxed out a credit card and just like printed, because back then I was doing digital prints, and I just like printed a bunch of stuff, and so I could have that experience. And then we had our group exhibition, similar, like what that you had this obligation.
Yeah.
And once again, like I was trying to stand out a little bit, and I like called in all my favors, and instead of having my show in the student gallery, I got to do it in the place where they usually have the visiting artists.
Cool.
And so I was like really pumped about that. But then the irony of it was that because there was no precedent for that, people had no idea that I was in the show. So like,
you didn't get a lot of traffic?
No, I got traffic, but it was like that people were like, oh, I thought that was a visiting artist, because like you just get used to like if it's, you know, if you're on the stage, that's what's happening, you know. But I took that as a good sign that it wasn't like, what is this stuff that doesn't belong here? It was like, yeah, this makes sense that this would be here. It's so yeah, I had that kind of like 2 exit show kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember it was stressful. It was fun, but it was stressful. Like having to go downtown and go back up, and the finals and down, and all around. It was crazy.
Yeah. And also,
but,
like,
yeah.
I don't. Did you have the same thing where it's just like you would look over at your peers and they didn't seem panicked, and you're like, how are you not panicked about like wanting to get like a resume?
No, I felt like I was that person.
Yeah.
Only because like, you know, I had a professor who's really just like salty and just negative in some ways, and is like, I just can't wait to see who's a crybaby at graduation, and then he just looks at me. I'm just like, Robert, I'm not going to be sad. Like, I'm excited. And honestly, in doing that show, I realized, hey, I am going to lose the support system. Mm-hmm. I am going to be on my own 2 feet. But also what I realized is throughout the years, like just 5 years of an investment, not only on like, you know, student loans and my taxes, but just in what I've learned, I can take this. And just like I made new friends and like had new gallery experiences and relationships here, I can do that anywhere. And I need to be confident in order to do so. So I was happy to leave school. Honestly, it's been great.
I liked it, and I also like not being there.
Like I liked it a lot, but I found myself more anxious like in class, like actually painting and having to do something in like a certain method type way, and also like, you know, seeing other people and stuff and trying to critique and be active in critique, but then some people not being motivated, some people just like wanting to be like, you know, I'm an artist, but they don't make anything, and they don't have a passion for making, but making is what we do. And so that conflicted with everything that I was, and I was just like, okay, I want to transfer my person into an environment where I can be prolific and be comfortable in being prolific and not have some of this environmental stress. So now it's like I can just live life to the fullest now. And I don't know, I always was like an early riser. I always arrived to class like an hour early just to draw, and like I was that, you know, I was that person.
Well, I'm gonna give you one like canned kind of question as like a good like bookends from the first conversation. And I was just wondering, you know how you said you kind of like fell in love with art and it hits you like a bolt, like, oh, I think I want to do this. You were using that white charcoal. Did you ever have a moment that was like the kind of inverse of that, where it was like, oh yeah, this can work as a career? Like, because I feel like part of it is like falling in love with art is easy, but then as you start making it work is a whole separate thing.
Living,
Was there like a certain gig or?
Honestly, the art place. To an extent, because it was my first job, and I first applied as an assistant, and they were just really impressed, and I didn't understand it because I struggled with a lot of like self-worth and also understanding my worth as an artist. So, but they wanted me to teach for them, and I had no idea what I was doing. And in walking into that classroom and making mistakes and falling on my face a few times, you know, I realized, like, wow, there actually is a craft to teaching art too, not just making it. Mm-hmm. But then as I became more passionate about that and reaching students, working with kids that had special needs, I love working with special needs kids. And also transitioning to adults, being an 18-year-old and walking into a classroom like, hello, I'm going to teach you adult drawing. I'm still learning myself. It changed me.
Yeah.
And it was exciting, you know? Mm-hmm. And I also realized that art is a learned skill. Like, so the more that I put myself in that environment to teach, the more I could learn.
Yeah.
And so I was constantly toggling back and forth between being a teacher and a student and making income from that and learning how to manage my time. I'd never been like a really big like sleeping in person, and my dad always worked so hard. He was like a 3 a.m. wake up kind of guy. Like, you know, your life isn't that hard. Like, you have to figure out a way to make this work. But in listening to those words and then actually eating them and receiving like bills and like other things, I found that it's possible to use your artwork to fund, you know, your life and your career. It depends on how you apply it and how you apply yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's honestly fatiguing. Putting yourself out there and also getting sales somehow, whether it's through your services or through your actual product that you make. But by doing both, I found it's more satisfying because I can sell paintings. I can, you know, have that teaching income and not feel like I just have to sell paintings and freak out, especially if it's only like one painting or two paintings a year.
Yeah.
And looking at professors, talking to other artists that are more prolific, like Chase King and Chase Lawrence, and oh my gosh, so many friends that I have. Daniel Arnold, who did the mural for the art place for that show. And all of them are really, they have like just a body of work, like they're obsessed with making and trying to fill that as much as possible, whether it be like, hey, just creating a business, hey, showing it, and I don't know. I think it's possible if you just mentally put yourself to it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with me. And
I'm still learning it myself.
Great conversation as always.
Yeah.
Find more information at doubleprimer.com.